This is Dennis Kucinich. And you know him, he was a former congressman, and he was also a campaign manager for R.F. Kennedy. And some people said that he left because of the war that's going on in Hamas, and very controversial war that it is. But some people also saying, you know, he ran for president a couple times. Maybe we should try to reelect him again. Look how good this guy looks. 77 years old. So, give you a little background on Dennis Kucinich. From 1977 to 1979, he was the mayor of Cleveland. And he was only 32 years old. They called him the boy mayor of Cleveland. So he was the youngest mayor at that time of a metropolitan city. And they tried to recall him. It didn't work, but he did finish his term. So from there, being the youngest mayor, in 1996, now think about this, from being the youngest mayor to in 1996, he defeated two-time Republican incumbent Martin Holt by 3 percentage points. 3 percentage points. Wow. And so when he won that, he never faced another general election where he even came close to winning, because he was elected 7 straight times. So he was a liberal guy in Congress. And he also ran in 2004 and 2008 for president. So as I was growing up, he was somebody that I kind of admired. He's a very outspoken guy. He didn't win when he ran, but he made statements. He was an opponent of the Iraq war. And so he's an opponent, as you can tell, from any war. So very interesting guy, still kind of youthful looking. Okay, there you go. 77 years old. And a couple years ago, he tried to run again to become mayor of Cleveland. He didn't win that. And not too long ago, he was a campaign manager for Robert F. Kennedy. And some people said he left because of Israel and Gaza. His views might have been different from Robert F. Kennedy. So what is he doing now? You say, what is this guy doing now? He might be running for president. Sorry about that. He might be running for president. Again, if not, hey, draft him. Seems like everybody is running for president these days, or maybe they're not. So what is interesting, too, about this story? I liked it because it talked a little bit about so what is he doing now, Dennis Kucinich? He's writing for this online publication called Substack. And I'm going to read this, what he wrote. Very controversial, but he is a very controversial man. Right here, 2 important people. Prime Minister Netanyahu and our President Biden. So this is what Dennis Kucinich wrote. He's on Substack. And I'm going to read his words. Can Israel survive if there is no ceasefire? Look at these pictures and think of what I'm saying. The U.S. could stop the war today if the Biden administration wanted to, but it does not. The question is, why not? And how many people are asking this too? Should there be a ceasefire in Gaza? Yes. Palestinian deaths in Gaza are approaching an horrific 20,000, plus another 55,000 wounded as Israel expands its violence into the West Bank. 153 member nations of the United Nations General Assembly agreed to a draft resolution calling for a ceasefire. The United States voted no. Is Pope Francis correct in saying this has gone beyond war? This is terrorism, as he describes what is happening in Gaza. The Pope was especially focused on the sniper murders of Nadia Anton and then her daughter, trying to carry her to safety inside the Holy Family Catholic Church compound in Gaza. Their offense, going to the only bathroom available. Wow. The Israel Defense Fund, IDF, has described it as an incident. Contrary to constant Israel statements to the contrary, there were no warnings, no justification. Nor were there warnings for Yotam Halam and two other Israel young men, all former hostages, who appeared shirtless, holding a white surrender flag and calling out in Hebrew who they were. They were also killed by the IDF. There were no warnings for 8-year-old Adam Somer Al Ghul, killed in the West Bank by the IDF. The murder caught on video, especially the actions of his frantic friend trying to pull his lifeless body behind a car. And of course, there was no warning given as Israel forced the medical staff and families away from the 5 babies left to die and decompose in a Gaza hospital. There are countless murders occurring in Gaza and the West Bank as the world holds its breath because Israel's partner in the massacre, the United States, has parked its aircraft carriers nearby in the Gulf. These deaths come on the heels of Hamas's October 7 atrocity as a cycle of violence builds year after year with a root cause, the illegal occupation carefully avoided. 13 of 15 members of the UN Security Council recently called for an humanitarian ceasefire. The U.S. vetoed the resolution, with the UK abstaining. The U.S. veto has protected Israel for decades from international condemnation. The Biden administration's atrocities over Gaza are a high wire act. One moment they intone concern about civilian casualties, and the next they send tons of additional bombs that kill indiscriminately and artillery shells to continue the massacre. Retribution, revenge, has morphed into calculated ethnic cleansing. Think about that. True friends would have advised restraint and a path to solve the conflict, not accelerated as Israel has done. True friends would have led Israel to address the cause of October 7th, the occupation of a people who live without most basic freedoms, further exacerbated by the attack on the Al-Ajib Mosque in Jerusalem, one of the holiest sites in Islam. The frequent warnings to Mr. Netanyahu from Washington are theater. Biden and Netanyahu are in this together. Again, this is what Kucinich says. Biden and Netanyahu are in this together. They need each other. Biden gives him cover intentionally to purge Gaza and the West Bank. Netanyahu gives Biden legitimacy as a defender of Israel in the run-up to the 2024 election, especially in those places sensitive to Israel's concern. The Biden administration and the Netanyahu government are cooperating in advancing a textbook case of genocide against Gazans in full view of the entire world, daring anyone to step in the way. It is doubtful that anyone will forcibly try to stop the destruction of an entire society because they have seen Israel again execute the De'Allah doctrine, Messiah. Wow. So look at this picture right here. It says in his story, my wife Elizabeth and I walked the rubble of Dahlia, a residential section of Beirut, Lebanon, and throughout the string of flattened towns and villages in South Lebanon shortly after Israel leveled them. In 2006, Gaza is a doctrine. A slower motion ethnic cleansing is taking place on the West Bank. And you see a picture of Kucinich and his wife walking throughout the rubbles. The death toll will mount dramatically as our president and Congress express grief while they send bombs. Some people do believe this. Once tens of thousands of Palestinian deaths are acceptable, hundreds of thousands of deaths will occur. Do you agree with that or not agree? So the goal of preventing October 7th atrocities by any means necessary, including a call to wipe out Palestinians, has anesthetized hearts, minds, and souls of Israel leaders who refer to the Palestinians as human animals and ants that should be buried alive. Fear and desire to make sure it never happens again has impaired judgment and brings to aggressors that which they fear, a continuation of attacks. The pretext for genocide no longer holds up. We are only trying to eliminate Hamas and protect Israel. Jewish people should be safe wherever they live. They have suffered discrimination worldwide, but throughout history, those who have felt such a depth of violence must know that subjugation and the infliction of mass violence on another group sows the seeds of a bitter harvest. And if you're an ethnic group, you probably agree with that. This massacre will only increase the deaths of Palestinians for self-determination. This war is not making Israel safe or Jewish people safe anywhere in the world. The nightmare paradox is that through wiping out Palestinians in order to eliminate Hamas, Israel's security threats will increase, endangering the survival of Israel itself. I write this as someone who stands for the survival of Israel, as someone who can only imagine the grief and fear that the mechanized state murder of 6 million ancestors does to one. I support the existence of the state of Israel and fully oppose all doctrines and charters which would seek to eliminate it. I also stand for the survival of Palestinians. One must recognize the continuing damage which the occupation has done to the Palestinians, the second-class citizenship they suffer, a condition which has been characterized by President Carter as apartheid. President Carter was a president back in the 1970s. Footnote. I stand on the side of peace for the survival of both Israelis and Palestinians and for the ultimate resolution of this conflict. Unfortunately, the killing of Palestinians will continue because the ultra-nationalists in the Israel administration have the upper hand in setting Israel on a course of continued ethnic cleansing. Their political support is pivotal to Mr. Netanyahu's continuation as prime minister, given his razor-thin majority in the Knesset. The plans to purge Gaza, the West Bank, and South Lebanon will press forward, as will the risk of wider war. The massacres of Palestinians will continue, notwithstanding calls for a ceasefire, as will the increased danger to Israel. The United States could stop the war today if the Biden administration wanted to do so, but it does not. The question is, why not? These are not the actions of a friend, because friends tell friends what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. Washington, D.C. should also heed the warnings of Alan Shorts, the director of the documentary Tentua, who has said, Israel will never make peace with the Palestinians without outside help and may be pressured to guide it to the right place. Will President Joseph Biden and the Congress be true friends to Israel and the Palestinians, or only think about the next election while ignoring the inevitable cycle of horror that they are doing nothing to stop? Thank you for reading the Kucinich report. This post is public, so share it. The Kucinich report is a reader-supported publication, and it is on Substack. If you'd like to read this for yourself, very controversial, get on Substack and type in either Dennis Kucinich or the Kucinich report. Wow, something to think about. So he's a very controversial person. Do you agree with him? Do you not agree with him? What do you think? Do you think that he's out of his mind? Do you think these two out of their mind?